Good morning. A few live stream glitches. So what we're going to do is that this is going to be recorded and it's going to be put out as a YouTube later. So apologies to anyone who's having to watch their category later on. You will eventually see it though. Hopefully the anticipation won't be too much. So good morning. We are here to judge the 2019 AIPP Victorian and Tasmanian Professional Photography Awards Landscape category, which has been kindly sponsored by Fuji. Thank you, Fuji. We love you. We appreciate your sponsorship. I'm Robin Campbell. I'm panel chair. This is Tracy, who is our scribe. And thank you to all our print handlers at the back. We love you. Thank you. So on our panel, we have seat number 1, we have got Rob Anderson, followed by Bill Backman, Alan Moyle, Renee Thomas, Mandarin Montgomery, and in the waiting wings we have Ruja and Matt and Paul. So they'll be coming on. I'll introduce them later. So category preamble. This category is intended for landscape images that depict the natural and urban environment. Entries may be literal or interpretive. Judges in this category are asked to consider both traditional and contemporary values, photographic technique, print quality, composition, and light. It's going to be judged in 3 sections: landscape open, single capture, and aerial, and we're starting with aerial. It is judged in 3 sections to assist the judges in their assessment. However, there is only 1 award. Entries in this category may be commissioned or self-commissioned. Photographs must depict or imply the natural or human environment. Polytics, which is diptychs, triptychs, etc., are permitted in all 3 sections. Landscape aerial. Entrants may utilise all post-production techniques, including multiple images or elements, in producing their entry. All aerial landscape images must be entered in this section for judging. Aerial images are considered to be taken from, but not limited to, UAV drone, fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, and hot air balloons. So I'll read the open section as we get to it. And if we're all set up and we're all happy, judge is good to go. Awesome. Go to our first print, please. This print has scored 82, a silver award. Well done to the photographer. Grab a quick comment from Bill. You're on the average.
Thank you. Very dynamic composition, which both describes a very dynamic composition, which both describes a landscape underneath the camera's lens, but also suggests something else. There's an abstract shape in here which suggests flame, fire. So there's a certain playfulness about the image which adds to its literal qualities.
Thank you, Bill. Next print, please. This print has scored a 79. And if we're all happy with that, I'll grab a quick comment from Alan.
It's a beautiful colour palette. The contrasting between the greens and the pinks is fantastic. I just feel like that highlight drags away from what we're looking to be seeing here. So I think it's a great composition, and again, that colour palette's beautiful. I just think, yeah, the highlight is really taking us away from the beauty of everything else.
Thank you, Alan. Next print, please. This print has scored a 79. I'll grab a comment from Renee. You're close to the average.
Look, yeah, it's a lovely use of colour and also texture within the greens. And I just think it could have scored higher if you had somewhere for your eye to fall. I found it hard to find and stop within the image to find, just a point of interest.
Great feedback. Thank you. Next print, please. This print has scored 77. Grab a comment from Mandarin.
Exquisite detail in some of those little Junie areas. I found it hard to rest my eye on a subject, and I found that the little bushes they didn't seem quite as sharp as the other details, which I found to be discongruent with the rest of the image.
Thanks, Mandarin. Next print, please. This print has scored a 78. But we have a challenge, yeah, and we will give it to you, Alan. You're up on 84, which is a very, very solid silver award, and you do have support in the silver category. So we will take it away.
So a beautiful colour palette in terms of, the blues, aquas, the mauves and purples coming in. Compositionally exquisite in terms of it's just pointing just well seen that I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at, but the way it's pointing directly down to that little detail that's at the bottom of the triangle is beautiful. This actually has a more cellular kind of thing, so it almost looks like we're looking for a microscope. So for that side of things, it's just exquisite, and I believe it needs to be up into that silver range.
Alrighty, a little bit of a disagreement. Rob, you're on 73.
It's that shape pointing to that tiny little detail is beautiful, but the colour palette I find jarring and artificial. That sort of magenta-y brown and the almost fluorescent blue. And the composition I feel it needs cropping. I think at the top of the bottom, it's just a little bit disjointed to me.
Bill, you were also in the silver range on 82.
Yes, I was. Thank you. The strength of this image is really in the interplay of shape and colour. I think it's a very it's quite a compelling composition where you've got wedges of different shades of colour, different hues of the same color family working against the geometry. It's not a conventional geometry of this picture. And I think the strength lies in the fact that it is a little bit different.
Alrighty, we'll have our writer reply. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, so the geometric nature of the composition versus the natural softness and the sharp shapes also help with that colour palette in terms of it not being probably the nature that you're expecting, but nature has amazing colours in it. So I think it should be rewarded, and this should be up into that silver range.
Thank you, judges. If you could please consider the debate and rescore. And we now have an 80 silver award. Well done to the photographer. Slightly louder clap. Woo! Yeah, excellent. Bit more enthusiasm. Love it. Next print, please. Alrighty, we have a solid silver at 82. Congratulations to the photographer. And there's two judges in the higher 80s, but they're not quite far enough away from the average to be able to challenge it, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say. But you're both super keen, so if you'd both like to make a quick comment, we can't challenge it, so it'll stay at 82. If you'd both like to make a quick comment, that'd be great.
Just a beautiful depiction here. I felt like I was looking at like an early Japanese painting. So the fact that it took me there from an aerial shot, just congratulations to the photographer on something beautifully seen and well handled.
That's a lovely art reference, thank you. For me, this was also it's an exterior landscape, but it could be an interior landscape. I feel like I'm looking at a bit of brain tissue or something that's going on inside the human body in the circulatory system. It's got an extremely unusual range of colours through it as well, which really elevates it for me.
Thank you, judges. Next print, please. And we have an 81 silver award. Well done, photographer. Very close scoring range, 84, 82, 82, 77, and 82. I'll grab a quick comment from Alan. You're right in the middle of the middle.
So great perspective, great depth through this image. It's exquisitely printed too, so having perfect detail through everything. I feel like it could have gone up a little bit higher. I think a little bit more care in some of the dodging and burning throughout the image could have helped it really jump up a bit.
Excellent, thank you. Next print, please. Hey, judges. We have an 81 silver award, and Renee is ready to go on an 86. We're going to challenge. Good on you, Renee. You do have support up there, so go for it.
The multifaceted nature of this, looking within it, I just found the colour palette very whimsical. Looking from sky and then coming back and it bringing you back to earth, and then finding the little poles down the bottom. The fact that you could find about 3 layers within the one reflection, and that they've handled it not with so much a realistic colour palette, but a more dreamy one. I just felt like it's something you could keep looking at and finding little things within.
Fantastic. Ellen, you're on 74?
Yeah, for me, I did enjoy it initially when I sort of, and then I just feel like it's, for me, it's just a little bit too bright. I want to see a little bit more detail coming through. I know that the shadows and reflections and things like that, the highlights are all, can blow out. But I just feel like, for me, it just didn't quite hold it together, and the composition was just slightly off. I just wanted a little bit more conciseness in how it's been put together.
Mandarin, you're on 85. You're up there in the distinction range as well.
When the colour palette is what makes it so superb. It reminded me of those beautiful cathedrals in Rome with all the artwork and the soft colours, and then you go up and you see the beautiful treatment of those tufts of grass with every minute detail, and the rest of it is almost like an inkblot painting. The texture of all the other elements, your eye can just wander around the image and just enjoy it. So I believe it's a silver distinction.
Alrighty. Did anyone else want to comment before we go for our writer reply? Yep, Rob?
Yeah, the 3 layers are what makes it intriguing and adds a bit of mystery to it. And I would just crop a little bit top or bottom just to sort of tighten up the composition. But the ethereal quality of those colours and those reflections mixed in with those very tufts of grass add a real element of mystery.
Yeah, quick comment from Bill.
Look, I completely endorse all of those comments in terms of the concept and the trompe-l'oeil nature of this picture, but I was very disappointed in the print. This is a print competition, and I feel that a lot more work could be put into this print to make it a bit more dramatic.
Renee, your writer reply.
I do see what you're saying as far as the crop and those little issues, which is why I'm not pushing for gold. But I do think that where it is soft in print, it is to give that dreamy, ethereal kind of feeling to it. And the fact that you do look and find the 3 layers, but you can sit back and go, you know what, that could be a painting. I still find that it is superior visual communication just looking at it, whether you look up close or here, that you can find the different things and that you keep searching around and find more as you look. So, yep.
Judges, if you could please rescore. And we have an 84, so still a silver, but 3 more points, which makes all the difference when it comes down to the top 3 folios. Believe it or not, sometimes it comes down to 1. So well done to the photographer. Very solid silver, and thank you, Renee, for a very solid debate too. Next print, please. Not sure why the scores aren't actually coming through. So everyone's pressed their little... Oh, no, here we are. Nope, they're just starting to come through now. Alan still hasn't come... You're grayed out. Okay. Still coming down the pipe. Oh. And then they magically reappear. And we have an 82 silver award. Well done to the photographer. I'll grab a comment from Mandarin, please.
Composition is superb. It's like a heart monitor. It's very balanced. The colour palette is quite pleasing as well. And then you've got that little final bit of the little sprinkling of perhaps water or whatever it is on the side. So the upper right. So it's very pleasing to the eye. So well done to the photographer.
Next print, please. Thank you, judges. This print has scored a 76. I'll grab a comment from Alan, please.
Great tonality and colour through this orange and white contrast. I feel that we just need a bit more to help us compositionally. It's a very static composition, sort of following a very fluid motion from top to bottom. Just needed some extra elements and possibly a bit more darkening in the highlights to give us a bit more depth, so we actually can see dimension through this and make it a little bit less flat.
Thanks, Alan. Next print, please. Alrighty, so this has scored a silver distinction at 86, but Alan strongly he's dissing it. Bit of an eye roll as well. Alan's on 92, so he's in a whole nother category. So he's going to challenge that score of 86. Go for it, Alan.
Again, we're getting into deep art here. This is exquisite in terms of how it's an ice cave, it's clouds, it's a blue rose. There is so many dimensions in there. There's a heart shape that comes through there in the highlights, in the shadows. It's absolutely beautifully put together in terms of composition and colour tone, the blues, the purples. There's just a real beauty to this image that it goes that next level. And the fact that it's an aerial shot, I don't see it in aerial. I see it as pure art. So I would love to see this come up into gold.
Alrighty, down the other end we have Rob. You're on 82.
Yeah, it's an image you see a bit more of when you look into it. It's definitely got levels, as Alan alluded to, which give it an extra dimension. I'm certainly willing to bring my score up at least another 4 or 5 points plus.
Thanks, Rob. Bill, you're up there in support as well.
Yes, I am indeed. I get to use the word biomorphic here for the first time. That heart shape is a wonderful, wonderful element. My first impression was of the interior of a flower. Alan mentioned it could be a blue rose. So I'm with him all the way here. I like the suggestive nature of this element. of this image. I think the icing on the cake here is the beautiful texture of the surface. There's water ripples right throughout here, which you need to get close to see. I thought it was actually texture in the paper until I looked closer, but it's actually texture in the image itself. So I'm firmly with Alan here. This is a piece of art.
Okay. Mandarin, did you have anything to add?
Bill just said it all. I also thought the paper was textured. Applaud the photographer for creating such a beautiful three-dimensional feel with those wavelets. And yeah, we all saw the heart, which is a beautiful addition to the image.
All right, Alan, write a reply.
So yeah, this is the softest, sharpest image I've ever seen. It's such a soft image, but it's so pin sharp. It's absolutely beautiful. And again, the hearts, but also the hands coming up to grasp the hearts. It's beautiful. This is a gold. So come up. Just 9 and another number afterwards. Anyone.
Thank you, Alan. Judges, if you could please rescore. Oh, sorry. Nope. No, you hold. Good. And we have a 92 Gold Award. Woohoo! First one for the day. Congratulations to the photographer. And such an interesting debate as well. Your language was just beautiful, judges. I think Tracy here got goosebumps and I was enthralled. So congratulations. Next print, please. And Sprint has scored 74. Grab a quick comment from Renee.
Beautiful colours. I just think if the photographer relooks at cropping maybe, and also just their treatment of image in their post-processing for appers.
Great feedback. Thank you. Next print, please. And we have a 79. So although we have 2 judges in the silver range, the average is not is 79. Unfortunately, we can't challenge. But if I could grab a quick comment from who would like to make a comment? Who haven't we heard from? Rob? Excellent.
There is a dichotomy of scale here where we've got the almost pieces of cardboard, a sheet of cardboard with little pieces of grass growing out of it versus the scale of a large, probably a pine plantation. So that ambiguity creates an element of mystery and intrigue.
Fantastic. Next print, please. This print has scored, on average, an 80. However, we have, I believe, a challenge. Yep, Mandarin is on 90. Now, Mandarin, just so you know, because you are 10 points away from the average, there will be no right of reply. So how this works is you get one chance to speak, and then I'll speak someone on the lower end and then someone along the middle, and we'll rescore.
This image has everything, in my opinion, to create a gold award winning image. Outstanding visual communication, interpretation, emotional impact, and technique. The cropping is superb. The beautiful arc of the shoreline. Those two little waves on the lower left, just so exquisitely sharp, with the beautiful softness of the blues up in the top of the image. We've got little, it looks like footprints on the lower part of the image, and then there's little figures, they could be birds, to the lower right. So there's a little bit of a story there. There's a narrative that is stunning, and this image is well above a silver, in my opinion. So I would love to see it come up at least to a silver distinction, please.
All right, Alan, you're our lowest on 75.
I again appreciate colour palette. The images, those little waves are beautiful on the side. I just feel like some more finessing in terms of the printing, in terms of the highlight at the bottom. I do love those prints there, but I want to see them. They're kind of just a bit too burnt out with the brightness to really bring your attention to them. And for me, I have a conflict with the composition, how it's leading me out of the frame, both through the line through the water and also the line of the shore. So it's both taking me out, and I want to come back in and see those waves. So I bet it's not bringing me through.
Renee, you're in the silver range.
Yeah, look, I thought it was worthy of a silver. It has been beautifully handled colour palette wise, and you've got that serene beach feel, but you also do have the sharpness come through. But I too had trouble where my eye kept falling to the bottom of the image where we've got the highlights, and also the little cookies, which could be birds or could be rocks. The problem of me trying to make out what was there detail wise was what didn't push me above silver.
Bill, I'll take a short comment.
I think it's easy to be seduced by the colour. It's beautifully captured this, competently captured. I think it's a very good professional image, but I think it's a fairly standard aerial view that doesn't really break any new ground and doesn't really suggest a strong narrative.
Okay, judges, so it's currently sitting on an 80, and Mandarin's looking for a 90. Everyone rescores, including you, Mandarin. Thanks. And we have an 82, a very solid silver award. Well done to the photographer. And as said previously, every point does count. So thank you very much for the debate. Before we go to our next print, we're going to do a quick judge change. Rob, thank you very much. We're going to swap you over for Matt Palmer from Tasmania. And we'll go to our next print, please. Very tight scoring range. We have an 82 silver award. Well done to the photographer. We've got a 83, 85, 82, 80 and 82. So everyone's very, very close. And Matt, you look like you're ready for a quick comment. Thanks.
Yeah, when I was first looking at it, I was thinking, oh, this would be great with a pop of colour or something. But then the narrative started flowing through to me, and it's really about the health of mangrove lands, possibly in Australia or somewhere else. And I think it's quite well handled in terms of how that narrative just slowly brings you into it as you look at it and start to take in that environment. So I think the photographer's done a great job of communicating that.
Thanks, Matt. Next print, please. Hey, judges, this has scored a solid silver on 84. And yes, we have a challenge. Good on you, Mandarin. You are on 90. Take it away.
Turned around and beautiful cropping. The circle just draws you in. It's like looking at a planet. You move in closer and you've got down the bottom, it's almost like someone's got a pencil and scraped lines into a rock that perhaps reflect the trees above it. The colour palette is just so exquisite in the blues of the water that just lead your eye around the image. It is almost like you're looking at some foreign planet, and there's so much beauty in it. It definitely deserves at least a silver distinction, if not a gold.
Alrighty, Ellen, you're on 82.
I agree again with pretty much everything that you've said there. I do love the composition, the colour, the contrasting colours in the blues and the oranges. I just feel like the highlights have not been handled as well, especially if when you look to the left, sort of the whites there are completely blown out. They could have been brought back in to really bring that in. And also for me, there just seems to be, especially in the trees, there's a bit of a sharpness issue. So I'd like to see it a bit crisper to really kind of bring this image, just that jump up to that next level. I think it's great of the silver.
Bill, you're on 83.
Yes, I had a bit of a conflict about the highlights in the lighter areas of the trees that Alan was talking about, but I decided they were more than overweighed by the other textures that were at work here. You've got the metallic sheen of the water against this matte, sort of gritty surface in the stonier parts of the image. The trees add an element of again, I'm going to go biomorphism here. It's looking to me like nerve cells, dendrites reaching out. But for me, the real strength of this image is the fact that it's presented to us as a circle, which suggests a world. And I think that concept is very effective, whether it's the external world or another world that we're meant to imagine. I'm not sure this is a gold, but I think it's a very strong silver.
Mandarin, you're right to reply.
I definitely agree with the highlight areas. I'm one for shadow detail, highlight detail. However, in this instance, as Bill said, the rest of the image outweighs the fact that some of those trees are a little bit lacking detail in the highlights, and there's not that many of them. You do have lots of branches where there is beautiful detail in them, and this is it could be almost an allegorical piece. It just draws you in, and it is worth a silver distinction for the visual communication.
Okay, judges, you could please rescore. And we have a silver distinction, 87. Well done to the photographer. Another sensational debate. Thank you, judges. Next print, please. And this print has scored a 79. For APRA, it would go next door for review, but unfortunately it's not the case here. So I will grab a quick comment. Renee, thank you.
I think if they brought down the brightness, the photographer's got a beautiful idea, and I love the play between the figures and the landscape. So just watching your highlights and things like that in post-production.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And we will go to our next print, which is the end of the aerial category. So we're going to start into the next category, which is telling me is landscape aerial, which it obviously isn't because we've just done landscape aerial. That's all right. But I'll do a quick judge change while we have this moment. And I'm going to thank Renee very much. Really appreciate it. That's sensational. And Ruja, if you'd like to join us on the panel, that would be fantastic. So we're going to landscape single capture. And I think we're good. Alrighty, so we're going to move on now. We are now doing landscape single capture. And so for landscape single capture, the preamble is this section is intended to reward technical and creative excellence in photographing and presenting an authentic representation of a scene without the benefit of creating compositing techniques. We're all happy with that? Okay, and if we're all happy, we will go to our first print, please. This print has scored an 80 Silver Award. Well done to the photographer. Grab a comment from Bill. Bill, a comment? Yeah.
The main strength of this print is the print. It's a fairly conventional landscape. We get a wonderful journey through time here. And it's photographed without dramatic light, and that allows all the tones and textures to come out, and I think the print itself is its strong point.
Thank you, Bill. And we'll go to our next print, please. This print has scored 74. Grab a comment from Mandarin, please.
This is Print Awards, and I found the image a little too muddy. Compositionally, I think there's not enough interest in the sky to have so much as part of the composition. And finally, just be really mindful of how you mount your image and make sure if you're going to have a border on the outside that it's even all the way around.
Yeah, and a quick comment from Matt.
Quickly, I think we were all looking for something in the windows or on the verandas, so if there was some sort of story element there, that would elevate it as well.
Excellent feedback. Next print, please. And this print has scored a 76. Can I have a comment, please, from Ruja?
The colour palette is beautiful, soft colour palette. When it first came around, I thought, oh, lovely, gorgeous. On closer inspection, some of those highlights are really quite blocked out. And so a word about just check your processing and or your printing.
Thank you very much. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. This print has scored a 76. And if we're all happy with that. Yes, that's a challenge. Yep, okay. Ruja is going to challenge. So Ruja is on an 82. You're a bit out on your own there, but go for it.
Oh yeah, always. I really appreciate the strong lines right through this. I have to say that I probably would have wanted to push it further except for that softness in the foreground. So I can see that that's holding it back. But I do love the lines in the different directions dragging you right through that image from front to back. So very dramatic, very compelling. So I thought it was worthy of a silver.
Okay, Alan, you're on 72.
See, I see there's a gold award in this image. It just hasn't been put together well. So I absolutely adore the left-hand side, those sort of three different tonalities coming through. But my big thing that's kind of killing me is the over-darkening of the sky, the burning in, which has actually led to breaking up of the pixels. So between the dark area to right above where that dune is, it just hasn't been handled well. Like, I could see this has been so well done. I really want to give this a great award. We just can't get it there because of that. It's quite a technical sort of flaw that's really pulled it back.
Bill, you're next closest to the silver.
Thank you. This is a much photographed type of landscape. The point of difference for me was the very, very sharp etching in the lines that come down into the front of the frame, but I was particularly bothered by the lack of sharpness in the foreground and in the background for that matter. There's not enough zone of sharpness through the whole thing to really make it hold together, and that jet black section in the center on the ridge overall just gives it an artificial tone. I didn't believe it as a landscape.
Okay, Veruja, you write a reply.
Yes, fully take on board what my fellow judges are saying. I still think highly dramatic, very compelling, and the unreality of it is something that adds to its appeal for me.
Unreality, what a great word. Judges, if you please rescore. Veruja, you hold your score at 82. And we have 77, so one more point, which makes a difference, which is fine. We'll do a quick judge change. Thank you, Alan. You've been on there for a solid 40 minutes, and we will welcome Paul Holland, another Tassie person, to our panel. Thank you, Paul. We'll go to our next print, please. Thank you, judges. Alrighty, so we have a solid silver at 84. We have a very interesting situation. We have, I got to press a button. That's all right. Fortunately, you are the highest scoring Mandarin on 90. That's good. Don't be too quick. And we have someone who's actually challenging the other end on 78. So it's going to be a great debate. I'm really looking forward to it. So Mandarin on 90, go for it.
Jeffrey Smart, as soon as the image turns around, it's colour blocking. It's superbly composed. The little chair in the foreground with the writing on the side of it. It's just such an intriguing image. Also, that little circular, I'm not sure if it's a hose in the background, the shapes that are within the image just create a really interesting visual exercise in graphics. And the printing is exquisite. The paper choice is beautiful. So it is a gold in my opinion.
Okay, down the other end, Matt, you're on 78.
Yeah, I saw all of those things as well. I actually thought that the composition could possibly be tightened up on the right-hand side, and I see what they're doing with the repetition of the triangles, but I felt like that concept of repeating the triangles possibly wasn't as strong as simply tightening up that composition to the left. However, these are more nitpicky kind of things, so I am listening, and yeah, I'll consider going up into silver, mid-silver, something like that.
Alrighty, getting pretty close to that big gold is Bill, you're on 88.
Look, the comparison to Jeffrey Smart is inevitable, but the important point is that he created worlds, he imagined worlds, imagined scenes, and the way this has been composed, with the repetition of very stark geometric elements, the addition of the chair with the shadow, and particularly the oversaturation of colour, the very, very strong colour, gives this an imagined quality. It's not a description of something, it's an imagined scene, and I think therein lies its strength.
All right, we are talking about a possible gold, so I'll take about another comment from Paul.
I'm really enjoying this innate sophistication that's being presented to us in a lot of different ways, structurally and colour as well. I'm a little bit with Matt, and then I feel like the compositionally it's a bit elongated out to the right, and if it was shot from a little bit more to the left, it would be crisper and tighter and have more reason for that space. And I'm a little bit disturbed by the left-hand side, this kind of murky, unresolved kind of area around the left that structurally I can't quite relate to, with the rest of it I can. I'm listening.
All right, Mandarin, write a reply.
So thank you for the comments, and I take them all on board. I respectfully disagree with the cropping comment. I think the repeating shape with those triangles actually leads your eye through the composition beautifully. As I mentioned before, those little elements in the background, that little curly hose or whatever it is, and your eye goes past that back door that says no standing. Well, you've got a chair there, so there's humour in the image as well, and that in itself is worthy of a gold, along with all those other elements that make this such a superb image.
All right, judges, if you could please consider the debate and rescore. Mandarin, you hold your score on 90. Ooh, we now have an 88. Solid silver award. Well done to the photographer. Sensational. Extra 4 points. Well done. Next print, please.
It's just Tracy stepping in for Robin at the moment. We have a 75 for this image. Bill, would you like to make a comment?
Content, composition and lighting, they're all there, but they're all fairly standard. There's the photographer hasn't taken us anywhere new in this picture. The intriguing, the rope, which is obviously a swing that people use to swing out into the water, is there, but it's not really a strong narrative element in this picture.
Thank you, Bill. Can we have the next print, please?
This print has scored 78. And I'll grab a comment from Bill. You're right in the middle.
Right on that score. Once again, content, composition, lighting. There's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. Well, the lighting, actually. The lighting's not very interesting. Content and composition are fine, but this is not a difficult subject to photograph. It's not an uncommon scene. I would think this is just a good, solid professional capture.
Thank you, judges. Next print, please. Alrighty, this print has scored an 86, which is a solid silver. However, we have a challenge from Bill. Bill is on gold on 92. Go for it, Bill.
This is one of the most photographed landscapes in Africa. Sand dunes in Namibia. It's been absolutely wonderfully seen. I've never seen a version of it like this. The composition is unusual. Normally, this is a horizontal format. We see many panoramas here. We don't often see a vertical. This shadowy area at the top left, which really anchors the picture, and then we have this almost violent gesture. You don't often see gesture in landscape, and it's this wonderful curved line, almost like a fingernail has traced the line of shadow along this dune, which brings us down to the clay pan at the bottom with the mature tree and the old withered tree. I think it makes a statement about the harshness of the landscape itself, but it's also a beautifully artistic statement.
All right, Matt, you're on 81.
Yeah, I saw the same things, and I felt that that was kind of in the silver award range for me because perhaps I feel a little bit more familiar with this kind of photograph or this kind of framing of this subject. So I found it quite an awe-inspiring landscape, but I also felt that it was quite familiar to me at the same time, and I was looking for a little bit more originality of interpretation. But I do like the tornado form that they've created using the sand dunes. So I'm listening. I think that's a bingo.
Yep. All right, Mandarin, you look very keen to speak.
Masterfully composed. It's superb. The trees and the shrubs at the bottom have their own personality. They're like different people. What let it down for me, and I'm on a silver distinction, I would have liked to have, and this is a very minute detail, but that little shrub, the second from the right, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more detail in that. It sort of blends into the orange in the background, so it loses a bit of its own personality. But keep talking.
Paul, you're really close to a gold. Can I have a quick comment from you?
Yeah, 88 for me. The reason I held back, I think, is these large negative spaces, particularly on the right. I feel like it's a big block, and I want to see more texture or form or something to lead me through and enjoy that large negative space in the image. And one of the main reasons I went there is I feel like there's two planar ways you can relate to this image. I can look straight on, flat on, as I am directly here, and I actually feel like the upper half feels like an aerial, structural sort of, what's my word? Sorry, I need a coffee. Well, the two different angles of viewpoint I can relate is unusual to see in a single composition and very, very clever.
Alrighty, Bill, your right to reply.
This is a very active landscape, which is a term we don't often use with it. It's telling us a story as well, not only about the environment, but about the evanescence of life in these particular climes. That vanishing little tree on the right, I think, is part of the narrative. The fact that it's fading away and disappearing in this really harsh environment. I think the simplicity of the composition is very, very strong, and the use of only a couple of colours really gives us something to contemplate here. I think it's a very strong image.
Alrighty, judges, if you could please consider the debate and rescore. It's currently on 86. Bill's asking for a gold. No. And we have a 90 gold award. Well done to the photographer. Sensational. And on that high point, we're going to do a couple of judge changes. Bill, you've been on for a very long time, so we're going to change you over. And also Mandarin, you've been on. So if I can ask Renee Thomas back and Rob Anderson, that would be lovely. Thank you all. Go to our next print, please. And we have a 73. And I'll grab a comment. Yeah, Matt, thank you.
Yeah, I think the photographer's seen some good elements in the scene, but I don't feel like they've directed me around the scene or to a central point of focus or a subject.
Thanks, Matt. And so just a reminder, we're judging the single capture landscape category, and it is sponsored by Fuji. Thank you, Fuji. We very much appreciate your sponsorship. And as a huge Fuji fan for a very long time, I can heavily endorse their products. Next print, please. And we have an 81, a solid silver award. Are we happy with this, or we... No, we're challenging? Okay, no worries. So, Ruja, you are on a silver distinction at 88, and you are challenging. Go for it.
And I'm on my own again, am I?
That's quite all right. We love hearing you. Please tell us what you see.
What I see is an old Victorian etching. You know, this is something that just takes me back in time to when the Europeans first discovered Australia and its weird wildlife and its weird botanical life. And so I see all these elements within this. And I think it's been really nicely handled, from the depth of colour in the trunks at the front right through to the back, and the detail we've got in the mists disappearing off. So the incredible depth in this image really spoke to me as well. So yeah, I think it's worthy.
Renee, not so sure on 75?
Look, I placed it in professional practice, which it is, and I think that I struggled a bit with how busy the scene was, and that there is no graduation between your foreground and background, and that perhaps if you had like the colour to show, even if you use like those oldie colours to bring that out, but in black and white, it did not have like the contrast and the leading lines that I feel like it needed to be a black and white image. So I was just still struggling with finding that composition and finding that story.
You do have support. You've got Rob, you're on 83.
I agree with Ruja. It looks like a Victorian etching, and the tonal range is quite intriguing, where you've got the highlights are not pure white, but they don't seem to have a lot of contrast, which creates that sort of etching character and tonal range. So it's quite an original way it's been printed and created. It, and it could do with a little bit more sepia or something to give it that slightly aged look.
All right, Ruja, your right to reply.
This is the Australian bush. It's not organised. It is incredibly hard to photograph well and get a good composition in it, and I think that has been achieved here. I take the comments about a little bit of colour added to it in the sense of a sepia or a tonality might bring that oldie worldy look more strongly forward, but I do think it has been beautifully handled, and I feel quite solid with where I'm placing it. So I'd encourage you to re-look.
No worries. So it's currently on 81. Rouge is on 88. Judges, please rescore. And it's now an 84, a very solid silver. 3 more points. Well done. Well and truly worthy of the debate. Thank you, Ruja. Much appreciated. Go to our next print, please. This print has scored 75. Can I get a comment, please, from Paul? You're in the middle on 74.
They're a beautiful complement, these two colours, and they're set together really well. I feel like the balance of this image is a little bit skewed. There's a lot of breathing room. We've presented with large print, but it's not directed anywhere in particular, and that area of cloud on the far left and that extra area of the hill doesn't have a lot of feature on there, but it's beautifully seen, and it's actually quite well printed too.
Thank you, Paul. Great feedback. Next print, please. And we have a 76. Ruja, have you got a comment for us? Thanks.
Yeah, I really love the colours. I think these sort of pale, these aqua tones are working lovely all the way through it. The greatest suggestion I'd make to the photographer is to look at reducing that sky down. There's a large area of negative space that's whiting out and not contributing much to what's going on in the bottom 2/3 of the picture.
Thank you very much. Next print, please. Yep, next print, please. Yep. Okay, that's fine. Do you want to just jump on for this one print, please? Yeah, Alan?
That was me, sorry. Well, my hands are a bit cold.
Thank you, judges. We have a score of 76. Are we happy with this? Or is that a challenge?
Challenge again.
Yep,
if I
all right,
may.
that's right. Just a little bit faster so I know to
Yep,
press the button.
sorry.
All right,
Yes.
Ruja is challenging on 84. Go, Ruja.
There's a beautiful colour palette. It just speaks of rust and ancient ships but fading away into this background. The detail is held all the way through. I had a lovely journey from the water at the front through to the bridge and the detail in the back. It brought me to this time and this place. So I think it's been really well shot, beautifully printed, and I do think it's worthy of an award.
Okay, I'm trying to think who to take now. Matt, yeah, you're on 73. You're keen to speak. Go.
Yeah, I was really excited by this when it first turned around, when I'm sitting back here, but unfortunately when I got closer, I was looking for all this detail in the rusts of the boat, and then I was looking for some sort of foggy transition into the bridge, but it seems like it's been created using techniques of selective colouring, that kind of thing, and the colours are starting to deteriorate on the boats in the background. So what I would say is I would just love the photographer to go back and reshoot this.
Alrighty, Paul, you're getting close to the silver mark.
Compositionally, I feel like it's a little bit squashed in the foreground, and particularly on the right-hand side, we're kind of forced into the frame. There's a bird in the centre actually, but it's just a murky blob, and yet I'd love to see it as a beautiful feature to add another organic element to it. I feel like the use of, and I can't assume what it is, but it looks like selective colorization sort of doesn't quite have the transition I like it to, and I feel like the print resolve falls away a little bit in the back of the image, quite noticeably. But I actually quite enjoy the boldness of it.
Alrighty, Roj, write a reply.
Yeah, take on board what I'm hearing. I like the way the colour has been resolved all the way through. I still think it is seeing something that dragged me right through and right into it. So I'd encourage you to look again.
Alrighty, judges, if you could please consider debate and rescore. It's currently on 76. And it remains at 76. But debate is always useful to the entrance, so thank you very much. Next print, please. This print has scored a 77. I'll grab a quick comment from Renee. You're on the average.
Lovely scene image by the photographer. Maybe just look at your cropping and if you're going to use like the hanging in tree, and also things like, I know it's said a lot, but detail where you've got the pier but you've lost a little bit where it's just a glow of white, so you keep going back to it.
Excellent feedback. Thank you. Next print, please. This print has scored an 81 silver award. Yes, absolutely, Rob. You're on 86, so take it away.
Yeah, the velvety texture of this classic subject creates that the whole sense of mystery in that very early or late afternoon light, and you've got that little wisps of wind creating that movement that slightly animates the whole image in a very subtle way. The whole layers and the S curves in this image create a whole pleasing composition.
Alrighty, down the other end, Paul.
Yeah, I was right on your score from back here, Rob, actually. And when I went up closer, I couldn't go there. I felt like there's a lovely delicacy and detail and resolve to the foreground that is just lost through the rest of the image. And it's not like a gentle transition of bokeh. It's just like a large block of quite unresolved, almost blurry kind of finishing through the whole back of the image. And I feel like this heaviness and this block and this angular kind of piece on the right-hand side just compositionally just detracts from this beautiful sensual flow to walk through from the foreground to the background. Gorgeously sensual image though. I'd love to hear more.
Renee, you're also in the silver range on 82.
Look, I think Paul said it all. For me, it was literally from back here, wow, I love the way the light hits and the softness of the image and the contrast. But when you go up there, I just feel like maybe where the focus actually lies needs to lie further back within the sand dunes, because you just feel like you lose a lot of that when you do walk up to the actual print itself.
Alrighty, Rob, your right reply.
You've got so many different facets of sand that are creating a rhythm like a musical piece, and I think you've got to overlook some of the little technical things about the focus in the background, and reward that velvety texture and that the whole mystery of this low light on the sand.
Alrighty, judges, just before you rescore, it scored an average of 81, but it was actually by majority 79. So at this point, it's not actually a silver. So Rob, you're on 86. So it would require at least one more person to move from the 70 range to 80 range to get that silver award. So judges, if you could please rescore. And we have a very solid silver on 82. Well done to the photographer. Excellent debate. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. This print has scored by majority a 79. However, we have two people wanting to challenge. Well, we have one person definitely wanting to challenge. Renee, sensational. Renee is on 85. So it's scored by majority 79, which means that there's 3 judges in the 70s and 2 not in the 70s. So Renee, on 85, go for it.
This is just an exquisite minimalist image. Now, if you go through each of the layers of snow, each has detail, each has beauty, and then you have this sharpness in the middle with the ice coming through, which is that really, really cold blue. To me, this is just visually superb, and I'd love to hear what others have to say, because I think go through it and have a look at each layer. If you go through each level of ice, you actually have different textures and colour through each. And back to the sky, which holds the same kind of tonality. So, yeah, come up, guys.
Alrighty, Rob Anderson, not so sure on 75.
Yeah, it's just a triangle of highlight in the foreground, which has got no detail, which is taking my eye to the centre of that image, which is distracting. I just would like a little more, a bit more detail in the highlights. I know it's technically very difficult in ice and snow, and compositionally, I think it's a little bit. It's just a bit loose. You could really crop a little bit on the left and to tighten up the image.
Rouge, you're in sport. You're an 84 as well.
Yeah, I know how hard it is to photograph snow like these under these conditions, and I can see detail in those highlights. I think the highlight details all the way through have been really well handled. And so I think it is a lovely, ethereal, beautiful print. So yes, definitely award range.
Alrighty, Renee, your right to reply.
So to address the composition, I felt like the two hills in the background actually draw you forward. And then when you come forward to that front little bit of like mountain or snow dune, you're pushed back to look towards the ice. So for me, I found the composition very appealing. As far as the one that's a little bit brighter in the centre there, I feel like that would be your sunshine coming in from the right top-hand corner. So for me, it all just marries up beautifully. And I'd love you guys to have a little bit of a rescore. Thank you.
Okay, so it's currently on 79. Judges, if you could please rescore. Renee, you stay on 85. We now have a silver award at 81. Well done to the photographer. Excellent. Next print, please. And this print has scored 82, a solid silver award. Well done to the photographer. And Matt, you're on the average. Quick comment?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept. We're used to seeing flamingos parading around in waterholes that are drying up around Africa, and to see it in a kind of Arctic kind of context is quite fascinating. They've done well to position the birds against the frozen water to give them that separation from the mountains in the background.
Great feedback. And we'll do a quick judge change. Matt, you've been on for nearly 50 minutes, so you can have a break, and we'll get Alan back on. Thank you very much. Next print, please. And this print has scored a 71. I'll grab a quick comment from Ruja.
Great colour. Oops, here we go. Great colour palette. But I really would advise the photographer to have another look at their composition and framing and see if we can make a more interesting arrangement within that frame.
Great feedback. Thank you very much. Next print, please. This print has scored 75. I'll grab a comment from Rob. Oh, sorry.
A postcard scene which has been not nicely composed. I think the boat, the right-hand boat, needs to sort of be offset a little bit from the rock in the foreground. Just needs a little bit of, I don't know, a bit of human element or some other little twist to give it a bit more narrative. You've got the background, you've got the scene, you've got the actual perfect environment. You need a story to fit within it to make it a silver.
Thanks, Rob. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. This print has scored an 82, a solid silver, and we have, yes, a challenge. All right, Paul, thank you for that really fast hand. I love it. You're an 88, go.
Beautifully delicate, sophisticated, gorgeous, subtle luminance just wafting through this image. I love the geometry of design where it's just sloping down to the right-hand side. And when you get to that right-hand side, which it gently leads to you, there's a beautiful little reward for this gorgeous little extra layer in the background. There's a wonderful depth. And the sharpening on all the way through this image is superb. I can feel myself wrapping around every part of it structurally because it's dimensionally sitting so beautifully on the page. Very sophisticated, elegant image on silver distinction.
Alrighty, down the other end we have Ruja. You're on 76.
It's an image with a beautiful colour palette, a nice scene. I take what you're saying, but I struggle to see where it is that's beyond good professional practice, where the award quality that would be required to take it to a silver or a distinction. So talk to me, please.
Alrighty, Rob, you're in support. You're on 83.
Yeah, I believe this is in near the Cradle Mountain area of Tassie, and it's perfectly time of day with that little bit of ripple of in the reflection. The blueness adds a little bit of slight originality and cool crispness to the image. It's definitely a silver, perhaps a silver distinction.
Alrighty, right a reply there, Paul.
Yeah, the print quality is absolutely stupendous. I feel like there's an emotive quality here that really brings it there for me. and the choice of the time of day, the beautiful color palette, that hint of magenta with blues that softly flow around through the image, it really couldn't have been photographed better. I've stood on this shore many times myself, and I would quite amazed that in my 20 years of shooting this place, I've never seen a capture just quite as pristine as this. But I feel again, it's speaking of serenity in a way that's so gracefully and sophisticatedly handled, with a gorgeous graphic component to it and a wonderful reveal as you walk all the way through the image. It's a bit more than a silver, I feel.
Okay, judges, if you can please consider the debate. It's currently on 82, Paul's on 88. We now have an 86 silver distinction. Congratulations to the photographer. We'll do a quick judge shame. Rouge, you've been on a really long time. Thank you so much for everything. And we'll get Mandarin Montgomery back. And we'll go to our next print, please. And this print has scored a 79. I'll grab a quick comment from you, Alan.
So well captured, great use of perspective, angle. It's really well professionally captured. One of the things that probably led me down a little bit was your eyes drawn right to the centre naturally by all the lines coming down the centre bottom, and there's just not a huge point of interest there that's leading us to it. And then you also have on the outside edges, there's sort of the resolution of the lenses probably let you down a little bit because it's quite soft around the edges.
Thank you very much. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. And this has scored a 78. Mandarin, you're on the average. Can I have a comment, please?
I felt that this, maybe the photographer was trying to infer the dustiness of the environment, but it felt like there was an 81B filter over it. It just felt like the colour wasn't quite the way it should be. It felt a little muddy. Also, the sky, the gradation of the sky is almost there, but I did see some subtle banding, so a little bit extra work there.
Thank you, Mandarin. Next print, please. And we have by majority an 85, a silver with distinction. Well done, the photographer. If I can grab a quick comment from who's on the average? Paul.
Oh, the graduation of colour through this image from foreground to background is incredibly well handled. I personally love the pictographic kind of feel when I got really close, and this dainty, gorgeous use of colour, and just this juxtaposition between an organic kind of feature and this beautiful little bird that's an observer to the scene that could have been there for millennia, and man's just placed himself in this scene, which for a very short period of time. So I felt like there was a timeless quality it was speaking to from a narrative. Beautifully done.
Excellent. And we're going to do a quick judge change. Thank you, Paul, for your solid 51 minutes, and we'll welcome back Mr. Bill Backman. No. Alrighty. We'll go to our next print, please. This print has scored a 75, but yeah, Bill's going to give it a go. Bill is on 82. Go, Bill.
It's unusual to see a film noir lighting treatment in a landscape. The first thing I'll say is that it lacks detail in the shadows. However, this very dramatic lighting technique is a very, very different way of looking at a landscape. I think this shaft of light coming through the background, I feel like I'm on a movie set. Actually, it's almost like large-scale movie lighting with this incredible. It could be headlights of a car. It could be a shaft of natural light. It doesn't matter. I just feel that this is a very, very different way of looking at a landscape, which is why I've rewarded it with a modest silver, which I think is be interesting to discuss. Thank you.
All right, Mandarin, not so sure on 72.
The aliens are coming. That's the first thing I thought of when I looked at this image. I love the concept, and the composition is pleasing. Where it was let down for me was in the lack of detail in the shadows. I would have liked a little bit more story in there. Also, an extra element, perhaps a little figure in that background where the light is focused on. The lack of detail in the shadows is not congruent with the beautiful detail in the highlight areas. So I feel that the photographer needs to master the printing area a little bit more, and then I would definitely go up.
Alrighty, kind of out on your own a bit, Bill, there, but Renee's a little bit closer to where you are. Quick comment, Renee?
Yeah, lovely directional light. For me, the thing that I couldn't bring it into the silver was literally that the contrast was so a bit too strong that you've got no detail in all those other sections, and there's no cookie to bring it back, that you've got the directional light, but I feel like I don't have a story to go along with it. So I'm listening.
Alrighty, Bill, write a reply.
So film noir doesn't depend on shadow detail, it depends on the drama of the lighting. And my reaction to this photograph was completely emotional. I just felt that, and conceptual. I just felt that it was a very different way of looking at a forest landscape, and it excited me, which, as we know, is an important factor. I scored it an 82, and it's worth considering.
Alrighty, judges, if you could please consider the debate and rescore. And this is now a 77. So thank you, judges. Good debate. We're just going to go to a quick blank screen for a second. We'll go to our next print, please. And this print has scored a 76. Are we all happy with that? Yep, that's a challenge. Okay. It's all right. Alan's on 82 and he's going to challenge. Go, Alan.
It's a beautiful depth to this. And initially, so the movement, so for a long exposure, to actually have the movement in the trees, but still being sharp, it's exquisite. The print detail through there is amazing too. Again, you've got some blacks that, you know, it's a darker forest, so the underneath is going to be not have any light. So yeah, I feel like it's printed beautifully. It's a great black and white. So I'd love to see it up into that sort of range.
Alrighty, Rob, not so sure on 70.
I think there's a little bit of a mushiness in the separation between the tree ferns and the logs in the background. Sure, it's the long exposure creates a sense of mystery about the image, and I like the light coming through the canopy of the trees. You just need to separate the critical compositional details of the trees and the logs against the background. It's all just merging in too much for me.
Bill, you're nearly there.
The real strength of this refers to the deep tradition of landscape photography. It feels like an antique image, something from Tasmania 1880, not 2018, 2019, right down to the movement in the trees, that whole idea of long exposure, crisp capture of detail and all those sorts of things. So for that, you know, a big tick, but I don't think that it really takes us anywhere new. If anything, it's a bit of an homage to a tradition rather than breaking any new ground or showing us any innovation here.
Alrighty, Alan, write a reply.
In that terms, it's a really great homage. So again, looking through here, the depth that you get through the image, the way that it has been handled in terms of highlights, shadows. This is quite a difficult situation to photograph. So to be able to capture all of that and present that to us in the print, even if it is a little bit not as exciting as it would be to have maybe some, you know, more exaggerated compositional elements, but I feel the subtlety and just, again, that timelessness that comes from the image and the long exposure just has that mythical quality to it. So I'd love to see it come up to silver.
All right, judges, if you could please consider the debate and rescore. It's currently on 76. And we now have a 78, so a couple more points. Thank you, judges. It was worthy of the debate. Quick judge change. Let's see now. Rob, you've been on for a really long time, so we'll swap you now for Matt. We'll make Matt Palmer from Tasmania. We'll go to our next print, please. This print has scored a 76. Could I have a comment from Matt? Thank you. Oh, yes. I don't, Matt's keen. Go, Matt.
I think there's a lot of potential in the photograph. The composition's been handled really well. There's just some haloing around the tree that's a bit of an issue technically, and I think maybe explore re-editing it from the raw file, and also explore the idea of maybe presenting it as a black and white as well.
Thank you, judges. Next print, please. This print has scored a 77. I have a quick comment from Bill.
This print is very rigorously captured composition. The colour palette is striking, but it really lacks a point of interest, anything to really engage the viewer. It's really all about the colour and the shape, and it needs a little bit more.
Thanks, Bill. Next print, please. This print has scored 71. And if I could grab a copy, a copy. Comment from Mandarin, please.
There's many opportunities when you're photographing underwater for all the intriguing elements, and I wasn't really captured by anything that really drew my attention. There's a couple of distracting elements. There's some real highlights of bubbles on the upper edge and towards the left middle that could have been toned down. But I would encourage the photographer to go back and just enjoy doing this sort of genre and maybe build something from that.
Thanks, Mandarin. Next print, please. And the sprint has scored 75. Quick comment from Renee.
Lovely tranquil scene, and lovely crop. Just looking at where your focus lies. So if you're drawn into the image by like branches and sticks, then maybe the focus needs to kind of follow through so you can follow the story.
Thanks, Renee. And Renee, you've been on for 52 minutes, which is a stellar effort. We'll swap you now over for Ruja. Welcome back. And we'll go to our next sprint, please. And we'll say hi to Bruce from Epson. Welcome to the room, Bruce, and thank you so much for your sponsorship. We love you guys, and we all use your printers, guaranteed. Alrighty then. We have by majority in 84, but Mandarin, you're on 90. You've already pressed the button again. You're so fast. Luckily, again, you are the highest scorer. So I will accept your challenge at 90. Go for it.
There is a beautiful connection between the right amount of misty, ethereal quality and luminosity with just very subtle vignetting around the sides of this image to just draw your attention to this little figure who's perfectly posed. You can feel the journey that this little man or woman has taken. The background mountain is just visible enough to really give you that sense of depth within this harsh landscape. The colour palette is absolutely spot on. The printing is exquisite. To do something like this without banding is very well done. Presentation perfect. This is a gold image.
Alrighty, Bill, you're down the other end.
Very subtle, very effective. I'm currently watching the second series of Fargo, and I feel like it's the poster from that, the frigid wastes of North Dakota. In fact, I put my coat on before I walked up there, and I'm glad I did, because there's mood. It's full of mood. But the minimalism still has a story in it, which I think is very, very important. I don't think it's sufficiently dramatic or engaging to be a gold, but I do definitely think it's a silver image.
All right, you do have support. Alan, you're almost there on 88.
Yeah, exquisite in terms of what everyone has already said. For me, the very subtle kind of haloing, the vignetting, very subtle vignetting around the edge, for me, it does add to that sort of freezing blizzard kind of conditions that we can kind of see here. So I absolutely love the absolute mood of chilliness that this gives. So yeah, I'm almost up to that gold pen.
All right, Mandarin. Sounds like you're getting a few heading your way. Right, a reply? So it's scored by majority in 84. It's a silver award.
Okay, so it is. I love the comments, and I respectfully disagree with the 84. At the very least, it is a high silver distinction in my opinion, but I genuinely believe it's gold. I feel that the minimalism of it is what captivates me in this harsh environment. It is so beautifully narrated to give you that feeling of coldness, of really feeling the environment, and that is a challenge that can be quite tricky to achieve. The photographer has done that without anything technical that would bring the image down. So I should have actually scored it higher, but I genuinely believe this is a gold-worthy image.
Alrighty, judges, you please consider the debate and rescore. We now have an 88 solid silver distinction. Fantastic. That was a big move in scores. Well done. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. Scores are a bit slow coming down the pipe. Must be the cold weather. There we go. They're coming now. There we go. And we have a 76. And we have a definite challenge by Mr. Alan Moyle on 87. Go, Alan.
So amazing texture that's coming through from this image. In terms of the way it's been presented to us is a different way of viewing silver landscape. It's like we're on a ship going past, top of a mountain. It's amazing. Hang on a second. Let me just see.
While you're there, this is actually an auto challenge because you are actually a long way ahead. You're 11 points above everybody else. You're so special. Thank you, Alan. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Which means you will not actually get a right or reply. So I'm going to tell you this now. So get it all out in the one go.
Right. Sorry, that's disgusting. So yeah, in terms of a unique vision of a landscape, to present us something that is quite striking lines in this circular presentation is a really well thought of aspect to this. The way that we have the 3/4 thing, if you look at it, it's a planet. We have a real planet. We've got the layers of different tones coming through in that texture. It really is an amazing and beautiful description of a landscape in the way that we normally don't see it. And that texture that comes through, the flatness, again, just brings us a mood of gloominess and mist. So again, I love this sort of interstellar.
Alrighty. So we're going to go to the negative now. So Matt, thank you.
Yeah, I agree that this print is all about the texture, but unfortunately when I got to it and looked at it closely, I didn't find that texture. And when I was sitting back here, I was like, oh, I really want to get up there and feel how these trees feel. I want to feel the bark and the different branches. But when I got there, the detail just wasn't there. It was like the whole scene hadn't been quite in focus. And I feel with such a minimal image that it is so important to get that key part of the photograph correct in this instance.
Alrighty. I will go to Bill. Thank you.
So I got the planet illusion, either one. And if we're looking through a porthole, the boat's on the move. I just find that the composition is very awkward. Makes me feel a bit queasy, to be honest. And more than that, I just can't see the reason for it. I suppose that's what it is. As a piece of communication, I really can't see the reason for it. When I look at it entirely as a reference to a planet, it kind of works, but like Matt, the detail isn't sufficient to draw me into that.
Alrighty, judges, if you could please all rescore. It's currently on 76. And this print has scored 77. Next print, please.
Hi guys, it's Tracy stepping in for Robin again. We have a score of 78 on this image. Would we like to have a comment from Alan Moyle?
It's a beautifully seen image. It's been printed fairly well. The thing that kind of brought me down was I was to the ridge that we were looking at, where we're sort of made to look at through the highlights coming through the trees and the ridge line. There's just nothing really there to grab us there. Like I was looking for a house or a castle, just something there, and there is something behind the trees, but it's just some white. We can't really figure out what it is.
Thanks, Alan. Can we have the next print, please?
The judges, this print has scored a 75. And a quick comment, Mandarin, you're in the middle.
I feel this image could have really handled some selective sharpening to perhaps bring out some more detail in the chair and tables. Also, the sky in the top really drew my attention up. So perhaps photographing from a slightly higher angle to make it more dramatic and to crop out that light area of the sky may have improved the image.
Super quick, Bill.
Super quick, some cropping would have helped this. All the interest in this image is in the facade itself, and there's several interesting compositions in the mid-range there.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to do a quick judge change. Thank you, Alan. You've been on quite a while. You can have a little break. And Ruja, if you'd like to join us again. And we'll go to our next print, please. And we have a 77. How about a quick comment from Rob?
I can almost hear the Bach organ music sort of echoing through the the vaulted ceilings. There's just too much in this image, and there's not obviously the rose window draws your eye in, but it almost needs cropping in to focus your attention on a part of a story. It's too wide angle and it's too much in it for me.
Thank you very much. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. Have you pressed your button, Rob? The sprint has scored a 78. And if we're happy with that, yep, we'll have a quick comment. Yeah, Matt, thank you.
I think the photographer's seen an interesting story here in terms of the interaction of the two figures, with one being quite flamboyant, and that's backed up by his rainbow-coloured umbrella, and then the slightly more, I'm not sure she's totally into it. Perhaps she might be in future, but not at the moment. So there is a good story element there. But in terms of the general handling of it, the really burnt-in corners are quite distracting. So maybe look at some crops and how you can highlight that story and draw attention to it.
Thanks, Matt. That's sensational feedback. And next print, please. This print has scored a 69. And I'll grab a quick comment, please, from Bill.
Well, back to the basics here. Content, composition, lighting all remain a mystery. I'm unable to identify what it is. The composition is more or less non-existent, and the lighting source is undefined as well. So it's very difficult to make a critical judgment based on those three things.
Positive comment as well.
A point of interest. A point of interest would have helped.
Thank you, judges. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. This print has scored a 75. And I'll take a comment. Matt, you're pretty keen, yep?
Yeah, I think the photographer's done well to spot this light and be in the right location to photograph it with those hills. In terms of the print quality, though, it's really muddying up towards the bottom of the print, and it's also introducing some different colours like green tinges and things like that. So just look at the print handling and the file handling as well.
Thank you, judges. Next print, please. This print has scored a 79. I'll grab a quick comment. Yeah, Matt, you're keen?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity here because the organ itself, or whatever it is, I'm assuming it's an organ, it's the color palette's quite psychedelic, and the electric blues and that are quite captivating. But then there's all this other stuff around the frame which doesn't service that part of the image, which is probably the most interesting part of it. So perhaps you could look at cropping and maybe even abstracting the organ.
Fabulous comments, thank you. Mandarin, you've been on a while. We'll do a quick judge change, if that's okay, and we'll welcome back Renee Thomas. Thank you very much. Go to our next print, please. Alrighty, this is scored by majority as 79. We've got two judges quite high. I'm going to take it. Bill, you're on 87. You're on the higher one. Are you happy to take the challenge? Yep. Okay. So, Bill, you can take the challenge on 87. Thank you.
This reminded me of something instantly, and as soon as I walked up to it, I knew what it was. Recently, the NGV had an exhibition by the great artist Escher. This is Escher-esque in both its handling of the black and white contrast and also this illusion of up and down. This is an interpretation of a bushfire-ravaged landscape, but it's quite different from most of the ones that you see here. Yes, it's got all the elements of it, but the way they've actually been arranged is very intriguing visually. So I think that high level of curiosity that it provokes in itself brings it into the silver range, but I think the print quality is very, very good. I think the highlights, I know someone's going to say something about the highlights, but I think they belong where they are. This is almost, in etching terms, it's getting through to the base material, and we need them to be white. So I think there are a lot of things going on in this picture which don't necessarily meet the eye at first glance.
Rob, you're on 76.
The upper left-hand corner, there's that little line which is distracting, and to me it just lacks a bit of a story behind the repetitious lines and the rhythm of the different layers of foliage. It's probably worth a silver, but I don't think it's beyond just a low silver.
Matt, you're on support on 86.
Yeah, it's a fantastic chaotic landscape, and not giving your eye somewhere to rest, aside from perhaps coming down to those highlights in the bottom left-hand corner, is deliberate on part of the photographer. The wonderful thing about it technically is that all the detail is there. The background trees are just as sharp as the foreground trees, and you can just look throughout it and embrace all the tangled shapes of these masses of trees for a very long time and keep coming back to it. So I think I would be discussing gold if there was that element that kept me into that spot, and then, embracing the chaos and then coming back to that spot. But as it sits, I believe this is a silver distinction photograph.
Alrighty, Bill, right a reply?
I do get a right of reply. That little element in the top left-hand corner, Rob, just adds intrigue to the picture for me. It indicates that this repetition of form goes on and on. It doesn't distract me. It actually holds me in the frame. The other thing about this is its texture, which is given to us through the contrasting use of black and white here, but it's almost like looking at fur. I believe there are many levels to this, and it's a very high level of professional accomplishment. I think it's better than just a silver.
Judges, would you please rescore? No. This print has scored an 84, a very solid silver award. Well done, judges. Good debate. It moved 5 points, which is quite a significant shift. So well done. Next print, please. This print has scored 68. And comment? Is it Matt? Yep, Matt, comment.
I think the photographer's made some interesting compositional choices in placing the landscape at the bottom of the frame, so that's really great. But with a graduated sky like this, it's quite delicate, and you really need to take care of dust spots and that kind of thing when you're doing your post-production. And I think just an element on the shoreline or something interacting with that landscape down the bottom would help elevate it a lot.
Thank you very much. Next print, please. This category is sponsored by Fuji. Thank you very much, Fuji. We love you. We love your products. We appreciate your sponsorship of this category. And this print has scored a 76. I'll grab a quick comment. Matt again, yep, you're pretty keen.
Yeah, conceptually, this has been really well seen in terms of interaction with the shadows and the railings of the verandas. There is a little cookie for you to find in the photograph, which is the shattered window in the top left. But unfortunately, because of the building is being photographed on an angle, the depth of field is starting to drop off towards that corner that has that detail. So just making sure that you shoot in an aperture that brings in the whole scene.
Brilliant feedback. Thank you very much. Nice and specific and very useful and practical for the entrant and everyone listening. Well done. Next print, please. And this print has scored a 77. Grab a comment, please, from Renee.
It's nicely handled. I just found the actual circle mat might not have been maybe the best choice for this image. It doesn't seem to bring anything to it. And also looking at maybe cropping down the sky a little bit so you detail and you're dragged back into the background of the image.
Thank you very much. Go to our next print, please. This print has scored 79. Grab a comment, please. Yeah, Bill, you're keen?
Yeah, I see a big positive in this. The photographer has very cleverly used the weather of the moment to create a complete change in perception of this from a watery landscape to turning a watery foreground into a solid foreground. So all the stippling on the surface of the water actually looks like a pathway, a roadway that we can walk across to that island. So I think it's a very clever shift in perception that's been created by the photographer.
Thank you, Bill. Excellent feedback. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. Rob, yours hasn't come through. Oh, there we go. It's there now. Okay, we have an average of 80, which is a silver award. Well done to the photographer. Quite close in the scoring range. Ruja, did you want to make a quick comment? No, that's fine. No problems at all. Someone else somewhere in the middle. Yeah, Matt, go for it.
Yeah, the photographer's captured some beautiful texture and detail there in the snow. For me personally, why I scored it just under the awards range was because I felt that there was a little bit of a conflict between the foreground and that delicate nature and the story, which I could see over the hill, but I couldn't really resolve that story because it's what's further away from us.
Thank you, judges. Next print, please. This print has scored 76. Grab a comment. We've got 3 people all waving at me for comments. That's pretty impressive. Rob, I think you were the first one with your hand up.
It is a lost opportunity, I think, here. You've got to captured it at just the right time of day, dramatic lighting, dramatic clouds. It's almost 2 stories. You've got this bright blue sky against a dramatic shafts of light under the water. And that's the story. So I think you need to crop into that shafts of light on the water and crop out the top of the image to create a sort of fully integrated piece of pleasing composition.
Thank you, Rob. Beautifully said. Bill, you've been on for 50 minutes. You're welcome to have a break. Thank you very much. And we'll bring back Mr. Alan Moyle. And next print, please. Haha, end of the category. No. End of the subcategory. End of the subcategory. My apologies. We still do have landscape open. Got you all. Ha ha. But we'll do another quick judge change if I can. Mandarin, if you'd like to hop back on. Roja, thank you. You can have a little break. Roja, sorry. Alrighty, judges. So we are now about to move into the landscape open subcategory. So the little bit of preamble that you need to know. Would you like me to read the entire preamble or just the relevant bit for the subsection? Relevant bit for the subsection? Certainly. Entrants may utilise all post-production techniques, including multiple images or elements, in producing their entry. That's your little bit of preamble. So if we're all happy and we are all settled, we will go to the first print, please. This print has scored a 78. And can I grab a quick comment, please, from Alan? You're right in the middle.
It's great, great composition in terms of how the image flows and you have the mirroring of your clouds at the top and the bottom. I just feel like, even though it seems like it's a nighttime image, that the brightness could have been brought up just to give that illusion of daylight a bit more.
Quick comment, yep.
Yeah, just look at the transition between the mist on the horizon and the sky. It's banding a little bit as well.
Thank you very much. And we'll go to our next print, please.
Thank you, guys. This print scores 74. Can we just have a comment from Matt?
Hello. Okay, we're working. I think there is potential in this photograph. There is some compositional elements in it that are quite nice. I like the strength of the trees, but it's just in terms of handling of the shadows and the highlights there on the left are quite strong. I think I was almost looking at the print going, okay, what kind of animal is poking its head out of this burrow on the right? But there was no animal. There's just a patch of darkness. So I think there's potential there if you go back to the raw file and re-edit and have a look at some ways that you can treat this file.
Thank you, Matt. Can we have the next print, please? Thank you, judges. We have a silver at 80 here. Can we have a comment, please, from who's keen? Renee, would you like to make a comment?
I love the otherworldly nature to this image and the dart of light, and also the paper choice on the flex style of paper, giving it that more 3D kind of feel to the image. So,
Just a quick comment there from Matt.
Just look at the design of this image, because we know it's a galaxy, but it is still abstract shapes and colours. So look at how those colours can interact with each other and sit on the page.
Thanks, Matt. Next print, please. Thank you, judges, all on an even score there with a score of 77. Can I have a comment, please, from Alan Moyle?
So very great in terms of the imagery captured, light. It's beautifully printed. I guess that the main element in this is that we're looking for that element of that different element that will drag us into that kind of a water area. At the moment, we have a patch of light that's coming through and illuminating some grass, which doesn't quite give us, I guess, the excitement we'd love to see to go up to that next level.
Thank you, Alan. Can I have the next print, please? I was trying to catch their attention.
This print has scored a 76. I'll grab a comment, please. Yep, Matt, you're keen?
I think there's potential in this photograph if you were to treat it in more of a high-key kind of pastel-y fashion, but as it sits here, that horizon, the darkness there is just so dominant. If it was a story about fire, that would make sense, but in a tranquil seaside scene, it kind of distracts.
Thanks, Matt. I'd like to do a quick judge change. Matt, thank you very much. We'll get Bill back on. Go to our next print, please. Thank you, judges. This print has scored a 76. Grab a quick comment from Renee.
I'd like to reward the photographer on the peach colour palette. Unfortunately, although it's a beautiful idea, it's just needs some more work with executing in Photoshop, things like over softening and that kind of thing. Also, maybe looking at your cropping so it's visually appealing to follow the line through.
Super quick, Bill. Super quick.
The placement of the moon in the frame dead centre takes away any tension from it. Maybe relocating that moon would have added strength to the picture.
In an open category, you can move things. Next print, please. This print has scored an 82. Got a couple of judges who aren't so sure about that. We've actually got Bill and Alan both on 88, but Alan, I think you actually had your hand up first. So I will give you the challenge. Go for it.
So this is an it almost looks vintage, this image. The way that we have this depth through this, the texture that's coming through from the snow coming through in the sky, the way that it's been framed, the way your eye flows through the image, it's absolutely exquisite. The depth has also been created in terms of there's some softness on the hill on the left, which is behind the trees, which really makes you dive right into the image and you're just going around it. It's amazing how this has been produced. It just looks like it could have been captured, 100 years ago. It's beautiful.
Rob, down the other end.
I feel that textured sky is a bit heavy-handed. It almost looks like we've got this soft alpine scene with crisp, clear light, and then we've got this almost rain coming down in the sky. So seems to be at odds with each other, the two halves of the image. It's two images in one that don't seem to be integrated to me, but it's a beautiful composition and texture in the foreground.
Alrighty, Bill, you're up there on 88 as well.
That dirty sky is fantastic. As a landscape, this is about a whole heap of things. It's about vegetation. It's about environment. It's about weather. It's about climate. It's about habitat. There's a real story going on here. So, giving us those wonderful bushes in the foreground covered with snow immediately puts us in the image and draws us right into the middle where you've got this gorgeous swan traversing this landscape. There's a loneliness about it, but there's a nobility about it as well. I think I picked up a lot on Alan's comments about it being a vintage image, but it's also very modern in that in another aspect. I think this is definitely a high silver.
Mandarin, you're on 80.
The using the texture is very brave and sort of pays homage to Mike and Doug Stern or Park Harrison, in my opinion. A couple of things that really would have added to this particular image, if that swan was just shifted over slightly to the left, so it was absolutely dead centre. The other thing that I found a little bit over heavy-handed was the absolute over-sharpening of some of the foliage, especially that tree on the right. It's got a haloing effect around it, but I am willing to go up.
Alrighty, right reply. Thank you, Alan.
So again, that dirty sky texture, to me that really makes it and adds to that vintage feel. This could have been sitting in a box for years and it's just been uncovered. It has that age to it, and I think that sky really does add to that. And in terms of our swan, I find that having it slightly off-centre brings that tension to it. So it's not perfect, and it makes you look around the image a lot more because it isn't right in the middle. If it was in the middle, you go straight to it and you'd ignore the rest of the image. So I believe it's up there in that sort of silver distinction range. I'd love to see it come up.
All right, judges, it's currently on 82. Please rescore. And we now have an 86 solid silver distinction. Well done. Congratulations to the photographer. Next print, please. This print has scored a 71, and I think, Alan, you wanted to make a comment?
So, as an image, in terms of the nature of this, showing all the bits and pieces, it's fantastic. I feel like we could have done some different things with cropping, but the biggest thing is it's just too flat, muddy, and the biggest thing is you have a lot of sensor dust in the sky. So make sure you get your camera cleaned or Photoshop out the dust.
Thank you very much, and we'll go to our next print, please. This print has scored 81 silver award. Well done to the photographer. Grab a quick comment. Paul, you look keen?
Always keen. I encourage you all to go up to this print if you see it on the wall outside, which hopefully you will. The delicacy of the backlighting and the rim lighting is absolutely exquisite. And it gives you a beautiful sort of foray to dance around. What I feel like would maybe bring this higher for me is I found the kind of resolve of that style of lighting between the upper and lower part of the image merged somehow or created a bit more believability. It's like a starburst, but it feels like the lighting style is really different from below and it doesn't quite resolve together. Excellent capture, combination of things.
Thank you very much. Next print, please.
So,
This print has scored a 76. Grab a comment. Yeah, Bill, thanks.
Focus on, I'm seeing, I'm not sure whether I'm looking at foreground, tree or sky here. Perhaps single out one element and focus on that more potently and give us a clear message here.
Really quick.
And mounting the image, there's actually a buckle in the bottom of the print, so that's make sure your print's flat when it's mounted.
Thank you very much. Next print, please. Paul, have you put your score in, mate?
Oh, sorry, I think you said hold on for the score.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's good to go now. And this print has scored a 76. Yep. All right. So Paul's on 81. He's going to challenge. Go, Paul.
Every point counts. First of all, I love this beautiful curvature of the wave. Like it speaks a lot of the physics of the way a wave travels and it moves and it bows around, and it's not often an angle that you can relate to from particularly lower down. I enjoy the very painterly aesthetic in the front of the image. There's almost a softness or a slight little blur that moves that foreground part into a very poetic kind of soft, nurturing sort of place. And being a surfer myself, there's a certain art to finding a way through that delicate point of where the wave's breaking and knowing where to go, which is where that surfer exactly is. So it speaks a bit of the narrative of somebody's knowledge of place and how to handle those elements and where to be. And the volume of seeing behind the wave gives you a sense of the power behind it as well. It's very beautifully balanced in the background by very delicate, very crisp, very gorgeous kind of reward in the back of the frame. Interesting sort of balance of colours, foreground and background. Love to nudge us up a bit further.
All right. So there's a few people that want to speak here. Mandarin, you're lower. You can go.
It is a lovely image. However, the technical aspects that brought it down for me were the surf spray from those waves looks more like smoke because they've burned it in, so it's got a grey effect. And that warmer tone over the image is, I feel, disconnected to the feeling of coldness and isolation.
Yeah, Bill?
There's an enormous amount of power in the back half of this image. That breaking wave at the back, there's this wall of water cascading over. But unfortunately, the waves in the nearest the camera are just kind of limping to the finish line. There's no real strong introduction to the picture for me. So the gap that this guy is going through is it doesn't support the narrative of Man Against the Elements quite as strongly as it could.
Alrighty, Paul, write a reply.
Yeah, interesting, Bill, that the narrative is that's what it does support, because a master surfer would know where to paddle out and they need to know where to go out where the energy is the least and the gaps are there, and which is exactly where they are. So it gives you this kind of walk in, and it's generally like that, and the way the energy of a wave bends around means there's one corner of it that's weaker and less, and that's the point of entry, which is exactly where they are. I feel like that colour palette is sort of a lovely complement. Like it gives me two ways to go. I can enjoy warmth, and which can often happen with an afterglow and a late light with the sea spray, which is there, which brings that warmth. And it's a wonderful counterbalance and a very delicate, beautiful reward in the background. Just love to give you a few more points.
Thank you, judges. Please rescore. It's currently on 76. And it's now 77, so every point counts. Great debate. Thank you, judges. Next print, please. And this print has scored an 83, a very, very solid silver award. Well done to the photographer. Yes, Renee, you're not. You need to be a few more points. Yeah, you need to be. Oh, hang on. Well, you are +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 2, 2. Okay. No, there isn't, but I can tell you why. It is because we actually have an auto challenge, which is 11 to the negative. So what I can actually do. Because you are 5 points away, so technically, but the automatic overrides it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the auto challenge. This will be very interesting. I'm going to take the auto challenge, which means that, Bill, you'll get to speak first. And you will have no right to reply, but it means other people will get an opportunity to talk as well, because it's on 83, but there is also an 88. So go, Bill.
I was intrigued by this image. I knew it would provoke debate. it's a great shame it wasn't printed a little bit better. That's the only thing that let it down for me, because I love the concept of this lonely foreground figure with this misty, ghostly background. The minimalism of it is very appealing, but I just felt the bird is too poorly defined against the background to really bring me into the picture. That was my primary complaint.
Alrighty, so Renee, you can go next if you like. You look keen.
The graphic nature of this print, wow. Even from back here before I got to step up. The graduation, I actually love the printing of this and how it's handled so subtly that you've got that bare minimum of colour, but just enough. It could be a rainy day at the ocean, but the background could also be like drawn in a picture book, but that's actually photographic. I love that he's looking down, it could be towards a chip. He's still separated from his background, but you've got this definite distinction between the front and back, and he's off centre. I cannot fault this, even the negative space looking down. I want to know, is he looking for his chip? Is there something down there? Is there fish that have been left behind? And it's minimalist as well, so well done to the photographer. This hit me straight away.
Awesome. Well, everyone wants to talk, so next I'll take Paul and then Mandarin.
I really want to applaud the photographer for the boldness and innovation in terms of how this presented with such big negative space and beautiful graphic design. Almost said graphical, I didn't though. But I feel like to me, the placement of the bird doesn't quite tie in with the back in terms of where they're looking. It's not engaging with that, and also I feel like there's a bit of interference with how close and how tight it is relative to the other features. It's kind of like squished in there. It doesn't have a lot of breathing room relative to the background, and I find that maybe add some tension to it, but I don't necessarily feel like it sits with in balance in relationship with the back features. It's too close and too tight.
All right, Mandarin, you're in the distinction range as well.
Superb printing. I love the softness of the palette, and I think the bird is perfectly positioned and printed. I can answer your question, I believe, Paul, respectfully. I believe that the photographer has been masterful in their positioning of that bird, because I'm not sure if you all know those little Woody Woodpecker toys that you have as children, and you can see that pole going up through the centre of it. So it's almost like it's a little statue, the way it's sitting. With his little beak down. Also the leading lines of those light poles just draw you back towards the bird. So I believe it is a silver distinction.
Alrighty, judges, if you please consider the debate. Everyone gets to rescore. And it is now a 86 silver distinction. Had to be a little bit careful there. Nearly got my yeses mixed up. Congratulations to the photographer. We'll go to the next print, please.
Thank you, judges. This image scores a 76. Would we like to challenge this image? Mandarin says yes, so hit us with it, Mandarin.
I think this image is quite stunning in its tonality. What drew me into it was the positioning of that bird is just below the shoreline. There's a little bit of movement, so it tells a story of it sweeping across the plain, and the colour palette is just so beautifully portrayed. So I'd love to see it score at least an 80.
Opposite end is Bill on 70.
Thank you. I find this an extremely static composition. You can practically divide it in half vertically and horizontally. the bird located right at the centre of it robs it of any sort of interest or attention, and the bird is way, way too close to that shoreline, the edge of the waves there. So tonality is one thing, colour is one thing, but it lacks strong composition and it doesn't have very much impact.
And Paul, you're in the middle. Would you like to get?
Yeah, what held me back a little bit was the vignetting. I feel like that could be handled a lot more sophisticated or masterfully. It's a little bit clunky. I really enjoyed the timing and the placement and the pop, but I'm a bit confused about the composition. It's not quite in the middle, it's not quite in the point of thirds, it's not quite a 50-50 horizon otherwise. It's kind of somewhere in between where it's a little bit lost in a way in terms of the strength of the composition, but beautiful tonality, and if that's an anticipated moment, then well done.
Mandarin, you're right to reply.
This is where subjectivity comes.
I don't know where that come from.
They don't. Yeah, maybe.
Robin's away, we're causing mischief.
This is where subjectivity can play into all these comments, which are fantastic, and I respectfully disagree with some of them. I feel that the bird just off centre slightly does add to a little bit of tension. I'm all for rule of thirds, but I actually really enjoy the way this image is cut down the centre. And the vignetting, I think, is really beautiful. I don't think it's overdone. I think it just shows the beautiful tonality of all those rich colours perfectly. So I'd love to see it get at least a couple more points.
Mandarin, your score stays at 85. Would everyone else like to rescore? We got one extra point. It's a 77. Great discussion, guys. Next print, please. Next print, please. We have an average score of 81, silver award. Alan, on the highest score there, would you like to make a comment?
So beautifully presented in terms of what we're looking at. I love how we have the leading stars instead of lines, bringing us through into the centre. It's great, and colour balance, purples and oranges, beautiful.
Thanks, Alan. Next print, please. Thank you, judges. Mandy, I just need your score. A bit slow here, I think. So the average was 80 on this, but by majority we've scored a 79. We do have a room for a challenge there. Are we up for it? Renee, let's lead into it.
I think this is a beautifully handled print. I love that they've got the exact right time of day that the light's leading us up to the tree, and then I feel like the texture that they've added leads us back down to the tree. So in every which way direction we're led back to it, I do feel like it's a very beautiful nature-esque shot, and I do think that the creativity of using the texture along with the lighting and the warmth of that lighting should be rewarded to the photographer.
Thank you, Renee. We have 3 of you on 78. Who would like to? Bill.
I think there's a very high level of professional finish to this photograph, but I see it essentially as a description of something rather than an interpretation of something. I don't think the texture in the sky is sufficiently engaging to elevate it into the award range.
Paul, you're just on Silver Award there.
Yeah, I just went in there. I feel like there's a lovely lightness and grace and simplicity in the upper part of the image in particular, and the reason I didn't go higher because I felt like that wasn't sort of mirrored or counterbalanced particularly well by the weight and heaviness and almost like clunkiness of the structure in the bottom. It's a little bit too heavily weighted down below. But I moved in there for, I feel a really beautiful, graceful, emotive quality that I could really spend time with, particularly in the upper part of the image, which brought me into the award range.
Thank you, Paul. Renee, you have the right to reply.
Look, I think there is a story there. Just looking at nature's elements, working from rock up into that tree and the life that it's lived in, that you can see the movement throughout. And I do think that the texture adds to that in showing like that earthly nature and that movement and sky and what it's been through to still be up there. And I do think it's captured at a beautiful time of day. And I do think it's superior visual communication.
Thank you, Renee. Your score stays at 84. Would everyone else rescore, please? And we got their 80 silver award just on. Good job, guys. Well done, Renee. We have the next print, please. Thank you, guys. We have a silver award at 82. Can I have a comment? Who would like to give us a comment? Paul seems quite bummed, so let's...
Apologies, at 1 point off began a challenge. That's not that I knew what other judges were going to score, but it was very clear for me, silver distinction. I felt like there's a beautiful breathing room that's given to walk through this image left to right through the diagonal lines and the space and that extra breathing room the lighter tones give you to sit with some of the details. Beautiful placement of the subject matter. If you walk back through the image, you're beautifully rewarded both in detail and in subject matter as you go further through the image. Very well seen. Congratulations.
Thank you, Paul. We might just have a bit of a judge change for the next print. Alan Moyle, if you could step off, please, and Ruja come in. And Paul, if you could step off, please, and we'll have Rob Anderson come in. Thank you. Stretch our legs. It's been a long morning. All right, we're ready for the next print, please. Paul, do you mind just stepping on for Mandy for one print? It's the minute Robin leaves the room, we have trouble. just waiting on the system here, guys. Thanks. It's all right, you'll go. Yep. Wonderful. We have a silver award here at 80. Good job, guys. Do you want to give me a comment, Rob Anderson?
Yeah, I think this is a commentary on man's domination over the natural world. You've got this beautiful flowing river, and then you've got this quite distinctive sort of reflective surface building. It's just a little bit muddy in the middle. I'd just brighten up that centre part of the image to sort of highlight that boat on the waters a bit more.
Thank you, Rob. That's really valuable feedback for the entrant. Next print, please. We welcome Mandarin back. Judges are allowed to step off any time they like for a number of reasons. Thank you, judges. We have a silver award at 82. Bill, you'd like to give some feedback? You're pretty keen.
If I may, just a comment. This is a fantastic example of how light can elevate an image. The good use of light. Everything in this picture is soft, background, foreground, except for the central subject where light is bringing it alive and also accentuating the fact that it's the sharpest texture in the picture as well.
Thank you, Bill.
Excellent work.
Next print, please. Alan Moyle, can you pop on just for Rob Anderson? And Paul Holan, can you hop on for Mandy just for this print, please? Fifth, 5. I haven't got, the internet's a bit slow. I think I'm missing 4. It's just coming through now. Beautiful. We have a silver award at 80. Renee, would you like to give some feedback to the photographer? Bill? Bill's keen?
Sure. Clever composition. It's not quite bilateral. It's just a little bit off centre, but the photographer has chosen her vantage point extremely well and created a composition that's kind of same but different. Top half reflects beautifully in the bottom, and the fact that it falls gently out of focus in the foreground really brings us to that dividing line and the lovely texture of the cliff. Nice work.
Thank you, Bill. Can we have Rob Anderson pop back into his spot and Mandy back into hers? And next print, please. Thank you. We have a score of 83, Silver Award. Renee, would you like to make a comment this time? I could see you enjoyed it. You had a big smile on
Oh,
your
I
face.
think it's beautiful. I like the foreboding of what's been in the background. Like, say, there's been a bushfire, and then that the lit part in the front is the new growth and the what's to be and what's to become and coming forward. So yeah, beautiful capture, and I love the idea. So
It's a really beautiful analogy. Thanks, Renee. Can we have the next print, please? On our judging panel at the moment, we currently have Mandarin Montgomery, Bill Backman, Roja Marchinek. I got that really bad. Renee Thomas and Rob Anderson. And our sponsors for this category is Fuji, and we really thank Fuji. We need our sponsors. Thank you, judges. We're all pretty even here. Good collaboration. The score's 74. Who'd like to give us some feedback for the entrant? Thanks, Bill.
Difficult to make a really effective picture here when the light is so mixed like this. You're working with, shadow and highlight, and neither one encourages you to a particularly successful result. I also think that really shocking green in the middle, it's just a little bit too obvious. So I think maybe a little bit more work on the amount of saturation and the handling of shadow and highlight details might have improved this.
I'm sure the photographer would love to hear that feedback, Bill, so thank you. May I have the next print, please? It's gluten-free. Guys, this print scores 76. We almost have an auto challenge with 9 points above from Bill, but we can just challenge it, a regular challenge. So, Bill, accept your challenge.
Ready?
Yep.
Unusual as it may be for me to be the high scorer here. Here we have a lateral thinking photographer entering this image in landscape. We're being asked to consider how landscape can be intertwined with history. And I think the treatment of this is really superb. There is a feeling of almost a traditional process going on here, not digital. Something quite antique, which really underlines the subject matter. The fact that it is a bit of a montage where you're seeing through one kind of a dreamscape into another really gives a sense of history and how landscape is interwoven with the human condition. So I think I'm just asking you to reconsider how this succeeds as a landscape. I've scored it as a 86, actually, 85. 85.
Mandarin, you're on the complete other edge of the scale at 68.
I feel that there was too much of a disconnect between the human statue and the background. Respectfully, it almost has a feeling of a pinhole camera. The landscape is just not quite sharp, which is not such an issue, but things that really let it down for me were the technical and also the placement of the head. I'm not sure if it's better with the eyes over those columns or perhaps in the lighter areas to sort of almost emulate the clouds in the background. Also the warmness over the face it just, I don't feel it works very well with the cool shade in the background.
We'll have someone there in the middle who would be Renat. Oh, Ruja really wants to speak, so go for it.
Yeah, yes, please. I see this as a commentary on history and humankind and our transience and change. So the only thing that is sharp that I can see in this image is the eye on the left in that statue. So it's like we're looking at this landscape through the eye of the statue and to see what has happened, what change has happened, how it has, that landscape, that building, that temple, whatever it was, is just deteriorating away. And it's a commentary on us as humans through the landscape, through the eye of a statue.
Thank you, Ruja. You're up there with Bill, so only a couple of points behind there. Bill, you have a right to reply.
Sure, I think the human element here, the statuary, is incredibly important, and I think its placement over those two columns is absolutely precise because it brings out the two eyes. It's actually the eyes that lead us into this picture, and from there they travel through this historical journey. I think there are interesting elements in the foreground, in the midground, and in the background, so that's a big tick as far as an effective landscape is concerned. But I just think the clever narrative that's wrapped up in this landscape is its biggest strength. And I definitely think this is a silver award, and I'd like to see it go a little bit higher.
Thank you, Bill. Your score stays at 85. Can everyone else rescore, please? Oh, we're just shy, 78 guys, but good, excellent debate. And this is a really good example of why we have 5 judges on the panel, 17 points different there from top to low. So next print, please. Thank you, guys. We have a score of 76. Really consistent scoring there, except for Bill, who might like to give some feedback to the photographer.
Thank you. I found 3 separate elements here, land, sea and sky, all kind of battling one another. I almost felt like the foreground was overlaid onto the background here. I'm not really finding anything that my eye can rest on. I would suggest to the photographer that there is plenty of good subject matter here. He or she just needs to search a little bit harder to make a unified composition.
Thank you, Bill. And we will go to our next print, please. And that is the end of the landscape category. So, judges, thank you very, very much for your concerned effort, your critical language use, and so forth. Everyone did an extraordinarily succinct job of delivering quality information, so I appreciate it. Thank you also to Fuji, who have sponsored this category, and of course to Epson, who sponsor all of our awards. We would not be able to run these awards without the help of our sponsors. So on behalf of the entire professional photography community, we thank you so much. So, the end of landscape. Hang around, judges. Thank you.